you're going from college football, being an analyst, to now like actually scouting. How the hell did that happen?
Well, I've been very close with Eric Galco, who's the Shrine Bowl director, for a few years now. Just been good friends ever since he was, he kind of got into the world the exact same way. He was just a guy scouting on his own. Came up with his own grading scale database of players, got a job with the XFL, and then got a job with the Shrine Bowl. And he's been talking to me for a few years. He's like, hey, if you're ever interested in getting into scouting, I know you do media. It's like your what you've come up in, what you like doing. But if you're ever interested, we'd love to have you on just to get your input. And this year I was like, I missed that. Like, I feel like in the media space, I don't want to say it's meaningless. It's entertainment though. Like it's first and foremost, it is to have fun. Whereas that, as soon as you're actually scouting and there's real people's lives on the line, when it's like deciding who's going to be at a Shrine Bowl, it's obviously lower stakes than who you're going to draft for an NFL team. But you just like it makes it a little bit more exciting. When I'm watching film for like the Shrine Bowl guys, I get a little bit more excited about it because I'm like, hey, this is actually going to have impact, and it makes you want to get it right. It gives you that much more drive to go about things the right way and get it right in the end.
It's funny because the one thing they don't tell you in college is that you're going to have to pivot a lot in life. And I feel like I remember you coming into the PointsBet studios, you saying, okay, I'm trying to figure out what my next move is. And now, 3 years later, you're scouting, which is really awesome. And that's why we bring you on, because we need scouts. We need someone to help us with our drafts that are all coming up. I know I have a guillotine draft tonight. Underrated players in the NFL that maybe like are young that you might have seen at the college level that we could buy low on coming into this year?
Oh, that's a great question. If you would have asked me this 6 months ago, I could have told you about Bill Krosky-Merritt for the Washington Commanders. I was so high on him coming out, but now I think that ship is like gone completely overboard. I think people are too high on him now at this point compared to where I was.
Who's in the chat literally every day. He's like number one fan of the show. He's high on Isaac Tesla.
Tesla has been awesome this preseason, and he was a unique prospect to say the least, in that he played at Arkansas, played slot, did not get thrown the football, but never dropped passes. And then he goes to the Combine's Pro Day and tests out about like one of the freakiest athletes you'll ever see at the wide receiver position. And it's just like, how is a guy who has all that he has, like what was Arkansas doing that they couldn't get this guy the football more? Because you watch him this preseason, and yeah, I think he's going to be a player here. The other guy I'll say is that a lot of people, because everyone wants to talk Browns quarterback room, I think Dylan Gabriel is starting games by the end of this season. I said it when they drafted him, and yeah, it was a third rounder, and yeah, Shadur's there, and he garners more headlines. I think he's ready to play. And once they're kind of out of it, which could be very early on for the Cleveland Browns, you got to see what you got in the young guys. You know what you got in Joe Flacco, and it's a guy who's, ready to hang him up probably after this season. It's not your long-term option.
Flacco's good for 4 games.
Yes. And then you'll see the bad Flacco. The Colts saw the bad Flacco last year, unfortunately. And that's a possibility. So I think Dylan Gabriel is going to turn a lot of heads when he finally does get the keys turned over to him. Because I think if Flacco
really think
does
the
get
Browns are going to keep like 4 QBs all year?
No. I mean, it's him, Shadur, Flacco. It's going to be that. You're going to keep the 2 young guys, see what you got, see how they develop over the course of the season. But then, I mean, realistically, they're in the number 1 to number 3 pick overall territory. And I think if you have a top 3 pick next year, you're probably going quarterback.
So those are some young players that I know that Mike's looking at. I swear, I take myself off mute and she starts barking. Some overrated players that maybe we are a little bit too high on, whether it's young players, whether it's just overall in the NFL.
Oh, that's a good question. I really hate calling guys overrated because, one, I don't necessarily listen to a ton of other people, so I don't know the overall rating. But this one's gonna hurt. But because I had him number 1 overall coming out, but I'm not buying the Caleb Williams second-year breakout. Everyone wants to say, "Oh, year 1 to year 2, it's a leap. It's Ben Johnson." I think he's more. Not to say he's never going to get there. I think he's not one off season away from getting there. I think you'll still see big time inconsistency. I think you'll still see issues with him holding on to the football, taking bad sacks in a way that, you have much better continuity. They're a much better coach team this year. They're a much more talented team this year. So it will be better. But I think people are just like, oh, it's Ben Johnson. It'll work. It's like, I think there's still going to be some growing pains that maybe, we're going to take year 3, year 4 until we really see Caleb Williams flourish at the NFL level.
Yeah, maybe he has to pick a better color nail polish, and maybe it'll help him out a little bit. We've also got some question marks surrounding JJ McCarthy, because people are high on the Vikings after what we saw last year, making Sam Darnold look like this Hall of Fame quarterback. How legit is JJ McCarthy for a year 1 quarterback at the NFL level?
I go back and forth on it because I think he has great leadership qualities for the position. I think if there's anyone who's going to outplay what they did in college, I'd bet on a guy like JJ McCarthy. But I just didn't love his college tape, quite frankly. I just didn't think he was a first round top 10 pick sort of quarterback. I think he's, a good physical talent. I don't think he's a great physical talent. I think he's a little on the shorter side. He doesn't have a cannon for an arm. He's not particularly big framed that he's going to be evasive, elusive to guys in the pocket. And I just think he really struggles with touch. And so obviously Kevin O'Connell has the Midas touch himself, and it's a very good roster and a lot of talent around him. But I think with him, I just don't know if he's quite a franchise. Like, we just haven't seen him play yet. I will have to, I'm going to be very conservative on the Vikings this year, because I think what Sam Darnold did, while one part a product of the offense, was also Sam Darnold took a big step forward in a lot of different ways. I'm not sure you can just say, oh, JJ McCarthy's for sure going to be better than Sam Darnold. I just don't think that's 100% the case. So I'm a little bit more conservative with the Vikings this year.
The Panthers wide receiving core too was extremely young. And after seeing now Adam Thielen leaving the Panthers, going back to Minnesota, I was showing this graphic earlier. I know that Cedar McMillan has a lot of hype coming into the year. Xavier Leggett is really wide receiver 1. Jalen Coker was right behind him when it came to receiving yards last season, with Bryce Young at quarterback. How can we break down this wide receiver room, and how bad or good can the Panthers really be?
Yeah, I think they're going to have growing pains. Like this reminds me. So I'll say I'm a Packers fan. This is what the Packers just did. What was it, 2 years ago? Like right when they turned it over to Jordan Love, they said, hey, we're going young quarterback gets young wide receivers, and they're going to grow together over the course of their rookie contracts and, see what we got. And with the Packers, you saw some, highs and lows. And I think that's what you're going to see, unfortunately, with this Panthers offense, is that T-Mac, I think, is going to be unquestioned number 1. I don't have questions about him. But I think with the rest of them, it's just difficult when there's no guys in that room, when you don't have a Thielen, when you don't have the coach on the field, when you don't have guys who know the offenses and know how the NFL works down pat, that you can trust when things are going south, when it's every guy out there. And the starting 3 are those top 3 guys, McMillan, Leggett, Coker. They're all their first or second years in the NFL. That is going to be difficult. When adversity hits, who are you looking to? Who are you pointing at when it's rookie, third-year quarterback, first and second-year wide receivers? I just know from the Packers, you're probably going to be a little bit inconsistent. You're probably going to be up and down as a unit when that's the case. I think you're muted.
Muted. Keeping it in the South, a lot of people feel like the Saints really are going to be the worst team in the NFL. They don't have any faith in Spencer Rattler, quarterback, who was named their starting quarterback this week. Are they really that bad?
So I don't think so. They were above 500 with Derek Carr last year. They go back to the first few weeks of the season when he was healthy and when the offensive line was healthy, and they were kicking teams' asses. They handed it to a fully healthy Dallas Cowboys team. They killed the Panthers. They hung with, was it the Eagles they hung with right after that? Game came down to the wire. So it's not a bad team. it's a horrible quarterback situation, right? And that's how the best to describe it, is that in the NFL today, and they last year when Spencer Rattler was out there, they went 0-6. So in the NFL nowadays, it's like, if you don't have that guy, because so many people do. So many people at least have like a guy who's capable, who can play quarterback. I'm not sure the Saints are one of them, but I mean, they got 5 first-round picks along the offensive line. They still have some stars on defense, guys like Demario Davis, guys like Justin Reed. There is talent there, Alontae Taylor as well. And they do draft well, but it really comes back down to Spencer Rattler being And then I don't think I don't think Kellen Moore is such that he's really going to elevate. I don't think he's the schematic genius. I mean, you saw Eagles offense kind of had struggles last year, and they were the most loaded offense in the NFL at times. So I don't think he's the schematic genius that's going to get Spencer Rattler to play like a franchise quarterback.
Now that you exposed yourself as a Packers fan, Shawn Michael is going to expose that, and he's going to ask you, like, what are your thoughts on Green Bay with no Jaden Reed and Watson?
Honestly, as bad as this sounds, I don't think not having Christian Watson is the worst thing. I go back to the end of 2023 when they kind of went on that run. I don't think it was a coincidence that it was when Watson was injured. He's not your reliable. So the way that offense is set up, it's like you got to be able to run the full route tree at receiver. They like having 3 options on every single play at wide receiver. Every guy's part of the progression. And with Watson, there are routes that he just can't run well. He is not a full route tree runner. He is a downfield, deep speed, vertical threat. That's fine. That's great. That can play on certain concepts. That's not a guy who can just be part of your 1, 2, 3 every single play. And like I said, run every single route. Whereas Matthew Golden 100% can. That's why they drafted him. Obviously, Reed is a big factor in that. Not having him is going to be huge. But Romeo Doubs can run most routes. And so can Dontavion Wicks. So I think they'll be fine. It really just has to come with Matthew Golden has to be a dude. Matthew Golden has to be reliable, because the hands issues from guys like Dontavion Wicks, guys like Romeo Doubs, dropping too many passes, that's what has to change this year.
I always also hate having to choose between Packers receivers, because
that's why. Because what I'm describing.
Right. You just could choose the wrong guy every week, and someone's going off, but it's going to be one of those guys, and you're always going to be wrong. You're always going to make the wrong choice, like I do. It's very frustrating. So I try really hard to stay away from them. Week 1, I know like we do a lot of props here, but week 1 of the NFL season, I know there's probably going to be some players that people may not have heard of yet, or maybe just like, these players that aren't spotlight wide receiver ones, RB ones. Who are you going to be looking at matchup wise week 1 that stands out?
Trying to so like down the roster sort of players is what you're saying, who could
like someone that maybe even if they have a late fantasy pick, someone in DFS.
Okay, so
we could say,
I guess one of the teams we just talked about, I think Kendre Miller is a very interesting guy this year, because as I mentioned, so he's the backup running back for the Saints, and Alvin Kamara's 30, and injuries is the potential there, but also like in a season that everyone projects is going to be somewhat of a lost season, why would you give Alvin Kamara 300 carries? Why would you give him this monster workload? And then when you're ready to compete next year, you kind of just turned him into dust and he won't be, capable anymore. I think you kind of give him a really light workload this year, knowing that next year is kind of his final year, his last hurrah sort of thing. And you might actually have a chance of competing next year. So because of that, you have this insane offensive line, right? The same run blocking offensive line. 5 first-rounders across the board. Kelvin Banks, they just added. They put Trevor Penning back at left guard, where I think he's more comfortable, more of a better fit. And then Talia back at right tackle, where he played in college at Oregon State. So this is a good run blocking offensive line. You got a guy in Kendre Miller, who is a 3rd-rounder that Dennis Allen hated, that is super talented, just needed to adjust to the NFL game. He was 20 years old, coming out immature, said that, but now he's in great shape. Best shape of his life. He's one of those guys. I think if Alvin Kamara ever gets dinged up, or if they just want to go a little running back by committee, he could be a guy that could be very interesting for fantasy purposes, because I think they're going to run the ball a ton given that quarterback situation there.
It will happen, because I drafted him last year.
That's how it goes.
I'm always a year behind every single time. It's week 1 of college football coming up tomorrow, a bunch of games, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. When Mike Renner is sitting in front of his TV watching college football this week, what are you watching for?
Oh, I mean, I can't wait for some of these quarterback matchups. We got Julian Sain at Ohio State, now not eligible yet, but a highly rated recruit, going against Arch Manning of Texas. Is eligible, but will he come out? I don't know. Insane matchup. And then we have Cade Klubnik of Clemson going up against Garrett Nussmeier of LSU. Those are probably the most popular. So Manning, Nussmeier, Klubnik, if you go look at like who are people's QB1s from a draft perspective, those are probably 95% of the QB1s out there is one of those three guys. So the fact that they're all in these highly contested quarterback matchups and highly, touted just team matchups week one, that's just going to be this week one is heaven for college football fans. It's one of the best week ones I can remember.
Heisman, obviously you love watching these guys and scouting them out from the high school level to college to pro. Who should people be looking out for on the Heisman?
So I think Arch is probably the safest bet just because he'll get talked about so much. And that's like 75% of the award, right? If it's a popularity contest. And when they're a guy that's in everybody's face every single Saturday, that helps your case. But the guy's a little off the beaten path that I love his odds. He's at plus 2,500 right now. Is the guy from his rival, Oklahoma, John Mateer, transferred from Wazoo. I think he could have a Cam Ward-esque season, but with a better team at Oklahoma that if they make the playoffs, if they run through the SEC and have a good year, Mateer could be in the Heisman conversation because not only does he have a cannon for an arm and can pass in a way, Cam Ward could, he can run. He ran for over 1,000 yards last year. So a true dual threat sort of guy that if he puts up big numbers, I think John Mateer could very well be in the Heisman conversation.
Mike Renner, I know you've got so much going on, and I really appreciate you taking the time out. What are you up to these days? Where can people find your work?
You can check me out on the Pushing the Pile podcast on CBS Sports Network, and you can find me Tuesdays at noon. That's when we do the Shrine Bowl prospect breakdown, and check out either of those. Talking draft and NFL. Can't wait for the season start.
So excited. It's your bread and butter. Mike Renner, have a great football season. We'll talk to you again soon.